Get to see myself in a reflection of a picture.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen,
Yay.
and welcome to the Fringe. Welcome to At the Fringe Stay at Home Edition 2020. And without further ado, over to our MC for the night, Dominic Williams.
Hey. Thank you, everyone. I'm talking to Mel more than I'm talking to anybody else at the moment and saying, can you just make sure everybody else is muted, Mel? So all those people in Ireland and Wales don't gabble on. As we come to the first part of this evening's program, and before we go into our open mic, our Pilsnerpoesi, which will happen in two parts. There'll be a live music event, punk, industrial music, poetry event in the middle. But to start the proceedings, we have a book launch. Our local legend, Joachim Becker, has a new book from Free Press, and I'm going to ask Magnus to come up and introduce Joachim.
Jag kom i kontakt med Joachim Becker första gången 2012. Han ställde ut sina dikter på Tranås stadsbibliotek tillsammans med Karin Sisek. Akvareller. Jag tyckte det fanns något oslippat, naivt och rått i dikterna som tilltalar mig. Följande år ställde han ut dikter och akvareller igen. Nu tyckte jag att Beckers alster var ännu mer intressanta. Så jag erbjöd honom att släppa en chapbok av honom. Och det blev I huvudet och andra dikter. Och på den vägen är det. Så sen har det kommit ut i sällskapsrummet på en psykiatrisk klinik. Som är även översatt av Colin Cornan och släpps av Dominic Williams förlag Free Fruited Press under titeln When the Barb Wire Slipped In med illustrationer av Jonas Bengt Svensson. 2019 kom Jag skifflar kvicksand med bara händerna och i vinter kommer Beckers första prosabok ut, en chapbok som heter Minnesluckor. Och nu är Beckers första bok utanför Tranås utgiven på Free Press utanför Göteborg. Och den heter Nya djävulskap. Så välkommen ta del av Beckers svärta. Han har omvandlat år av drogmissbruk och psykisk ohälsa till dikt. Som är en mix av Stephen King möter Stephen Crane.
Tack Mange. Först av allt vill jag tacka Bo och Dag för att ni ville publicera mig. Och ett extra tack till Sara som formgivit boken. Jag älskar Sippotändaren. Nu kommer det gå som en kulspruta. Idéer. Det är många som frågar var jag får mina idéer ifrån. Huvudet såklart. Och en del från hjärtat också. För ett tag sedan dog min far. Men jag har tur för jag har en farsa till. Solens upp- och nedgång. Solen är där den är. Den går varken upp eller ner. Att våga. Empati berör. Fångar ett intresse som jag inte vill förlora. En gåva att bejaka. Att våga röra vid hjärtan utan att såra. Försiktigt känna. Beröra utan att gråta. Men att ändå våga. Ro ditt svin, ro. Jag ror för livet. Inte för kung och fosterland. Utan för livet. Skamvrån. När jag var 6-7 år och inte skötte mig fick jag vara så god att ställa mig i ett hörn i köket. Där skulle jag stå och skämmas en kvart. Men jag skämdes inte, utan jag passade oftast på att planera nya jävelskap. Jag har allt som behövs i byxfickan. Bilnycklar, telefon, en penna, skrivblock och kofot. Missing people. Ingen ska försvinna utan att hittas. Om det ändå inte hittas, hör av dig. Myrkryp. Jag har en musstack i kroppen. Och jag känner obehaget när krypen bearbetar mina ben. Det enda som lugnar dem är whisky. Löneförhöjningen fastnade i coronas väck. Innerligt samtal. Under allvarsamma långa samtal förminskar jag mig själv. Jag är inte klok som gör det. Jag gjorde ett misstag. När orden började kännas som knytnävsslag i ansiktet slog jag tillbaka. Jesus sa, den som miste sitt liv för min skull ska få tillbaka det. Pep talk. Jag kan inte tala, sa jag. Du kan, sa Gud. Jag har ju gett dig en mun. Tack.
Ja. Jag heter Christer. Jag ska läsa ett par av Joakims dikter. Alice i Underlandet. På 1800-talet var det Alice som styrde den undre världen. Punk. Bara en idiot skulle komma på att råna en bank. Om man vill ha mer cash går man till SOS.
Bengt här ska också läsa ett par dikter av Joakims väldigt roliga texter. Det ljuva 80-talet. Det var inte mina föräldrar eller släktingar som fostrade mig. Det var Stephen King. Maginfluensa är riktigt vidrigt. Men mundiarré är nog det äckligaste jag vet. Tack.
Jag heter Jonas. Jag ska läsa ett par av Joakims dikter som inte alls är roliga. De är bara bra. Lögnare. Förut ljög jag så pass att jag själv trodde vartenda ord. Nu ljuger jag inte längre. Det är lite svårare att tro. Tyst. Ibland behöver man inte prata. Det kan räcka att vara tyst. Och man fattar ändå.
Tack så mycket, tall people. Okay, thank you, Joachim. Thank you, Jonas. Thank you, Krista. And thank you, Bengt. It's wonderful to hear that unique voice that is Joachim's delivered to us by different voices, and to realize how, as poets and performers, we appreciate the work of our local man. Okay, now, can you pass me my notebook, please, Colin? Because it's time to go into the open mic set. And I've wandered around the physical room and got a few names, but I need to go through the virtual room and check on a few names that I have there who are in the room. So can you, when I call your name, can you just turn your mic on and let me know whether you're hoping to read tonight? On the screen, a voice that we should have heard on Thursday night. Sadly, we didn't right then, but we're going to hear it now. Derek Coyle. I think Derek's gone to sleep.
You're still muted, Derek.
Oh.
Sorry, is that Derek Coyle or the other Derek?
No, you, Derek.
Derek. Oh, sorry there, Jeannie. Gosh, I didn't. I missed my own introduction there. Sorry. Well, delighted to read to Wales and Portugal and Tranos. So I'm going to read a poem I wrote in Tranos and possibly read first on that stage. Some of you might remember the wonderful Christina Scance exhibition on in the town hall where she made her Kafka dolls, which were very striking, and people can look it up if they don't know it. But given that the American election is about to happen, I thought I would read this poem as a prophecy to us all. So it's set in Tranos, and for the Welsh readers, bibliotek is the Swedish word for library. So just so you know that, it gets mentioned in the poem. So this is called the Kafka doll, and it's inspired by Franz Kafka and his short stories, which are types of parables. So I thought I would write a parable for our time. So here you go. The Kafka doll. He climbed out of the piano in the middle of the night, and given his experience of getting himself out of a tight squeeze, he had no problem squishing out under the door. He was happy to be free. Instead of running to the forest to live the life of some wild, feral creature, he headed to the center of town. Pushing himself under the bibliotek door, he hides there in its dark corners, furtively studying at night these strange creatures he finds himself amongst. Their law books, their history, mythology, they still seem strangers to him. Conquest of their fellow creatures, elephants, horses, dogs.
Okay, well, I'm hoping that Derek's connection will pick up again in a moment. But rather than leave all of us hanging, in the meantime, I'd like to invite to the stage from Tranos, Magnus.
Jeanne d'Arc bor i Malmö. Jeanne d'Arc bor i Malmö på pastorsexpeditionen, säger en skäggig man med vilda blå ögon. Hon färdas genom tid och rymd, har tröttnat på 1400-talet. Handlar på Ica Maxi, köper blommor på Gustav Adolfs torg. Hon vill inte längre vara ett franskt nationalhelgon. Vill hänga på Mikes bar, spela biljard, slänga bort sin jungfrudom till första bästa. Pastoral Mondrian-graffiti på en lantlig elstation. Urban, pastoral, graffiti. Mondrian topografisk elstation. Krasatåget skramlar. Något abstrakt med stil syns vid horisonten. Joan Arc lives in Malmö. Joan Arc lives in Malmö at the vicarage, says a bearded man with wild blue eyes. She travels through time and space. Her grows tired of the 15th century. Shops at Ica Maxi. Buys flower at Gustav Adolf Square. She no longer wants to be a French patron saint. Wants to hang out at Mike's bar. play pool, and give away her virginity to the first taker. Pastoral Mondrian graffiti at a rural power station. Urban pastoral graffiti. Mondrian topographic power station. Local Crossa train rattles. Something abstract with style seen on the horizon.
Thank you, Magnus. It's great to hear a Swedish man talking in English about a French patron saint, but even better to start the evening with some Swedish. I'm going to stay in the room for the moment, I think, and ask two people to come to the stage because I'd like Bengt to read, and I think he's going to get some help from Elisa.
Hi, people. Most of you see me before. I usually read in English, but tonight it'll be in Swedish with a Spanish translation. How about that? Tåget, del 1. Det är hästarna som drar tåget. Flickan stod på perrongen. Hon som eldade med romsk hunger i en kropp vinden vägrar mätta. Hennes tystnad är en piska som viner runt vagnarna. Ute på pustan doftar det honung och raps när tåget stångar sig fram mot kvällens heta panna. Just innan ljuset böjer sig för historiens glömda. Hundkex och lupiner gror i resenärernas väskor. I mina fickor spricker ett samvete och barn leker där med mörker i sina små händer. Ungerska vykort faller som syraregn eller förträngda bilder ur böcker som brändes en dag för länge sedan. Begränsningen består alltid av brinnande cirklar trädda på varandra som ryska dockor. På den översta bädden spelar prästerna ut sitt slippa gå i fängelsekort. Det saknas en kudde när tåget saktar ner och vi vaknar med våra pass. Morgonen ligger som en nyrensad forell och blänker. Byarna blinkar till med hus som rappades en gång av fallfärdiga fångar. Den ryska björnen dansar inte. Del 2. Tullpolisen har vägrats ytterligare anslag. Det blir inga pannlampor att lysa under sängarna med. Den restriktiva normen ruvar på ett ryskt ägg. För en stund sedan fann jag nya kupéer i en vagn som ingen varit i. Där fanns ett kontor med en sekreterare. Hon bad mig vänta på min tur. Det var igår. Idag har jag en annan biljett och ett annat fönster med utsikt som kantrat. Byarna blir allt fler. Hela tiden dyker upp nya vagnar med nya sekreterare som ber mig vänta. Biljetternas utformning förblir ett mysterium. Klockorna rinner som äggulor och prästerna i överslafen har börjat mässa. Tågstationer blir till kyrkogårdar, blir broar långt ner i marken där de döda förgäves letar efter sekreterare i jakten på nya biljetter. Träden längs med spåren ger hela tiden ut nya upplagor av olästa böcker. Oskrivna dikter lyfter som vilda änder ur stillastående vatten. Jag tar på mig hatten. Då vet jag att konduktören inte vågar ansätta mig med förlusten av kartan. Med bara piskrapp att gå efter. Det är en ny tid och allt är till salu. Greven omsätter de livegnas blod i ett spel bara de kan förlora. Det var så det började. Slutet alltså. Tack.
Hej. Nu ska jag läsa det som när jag översatt så tyckte jag att det var nästan mänsklighetens historia. Nej, det var det inte. El tren. Son los caballos los que tiran del tren. La niña está sentada en el andén, con su hambre gitano enciende el fuego y un cuerpo que el viento se niega a medir. Su silencio es un látigo susurrando entre los vagones. En las afueras de Pustan huele a colza y miel, mientras el tren avanza contra la frente caliente de la tarde, antes de que la luz se doblegue por los olvidados de la historia. Cicuta y lupinos se cuelan en las maletas de los viajeros. En mis bolsillos se deshace una conciencia y los niños juegan allí con la oscuridad entre sus manos pequeñas. Diluvio de postales húngaras, cual lluvia ácida, o esas imágenes censuradas en los libros que un día quemaron hace ya tanto tiempo. La necesidad siempre se presenta dentro de círculos ardientes que encajan unos dentro de otros, como matrioscas. En la litera superior, los sacerdotes se juegan su liberación o su entrada a la cárcel. Falta una almohada cuando entra amainando el tren y despertamos con nuestros pasaportes. La mañana descansa como una trucha recién escamada y a destellos. Parpadean las aldeas y sus casas una vez derribadas y sus prisioneros caídos. El oso ruso no baila. La policía de aduanas ha rechazado darnos facilidades. No tendremos faroles para alumbrar bajo las camas. La norma restrictiva se incuba en un huevo ruso. Hace un momento descubrí nuevos compartimentos en un vagón en el que nadie ha estado. Había una oficina allí con una secretaria que pidió que esperara mi turno. Eso fue ayer. Hoy tengo otro boleto y una ventana con una vista como inclinada. Aparecen cada vez más aldeas. Sigo encontrando vagones nuevos con nuevas secretarias que piden que espere. El diseño de los boletos sigue siendo un misterio. Los relojes se temas de huevo y los sacerdotes en la litera han comenzado la misa. Las estaciones de tren se tornan cementerios, puentes alargándose hacia el suelo. Los muertos vagan en vano en busca de una secretaria a la casa de nuevos boletos. Los árboles cercanos al andén imprimen todo el tiempo nuevas ediciones de libros no leídos. Vuelan poemas no escritos como patos salvajes desde el agua estancada. Me pongo el sombrero. Presiento que el conductor no se atreve a reñirme por la pérdida del mapa. Bastaría un solo latigazo para no obedecer. Es una nueva era y todo está a la venta. El conde vende la sangre de los siervos en un juego que solo ellos pueden perder. Así empezó todo. El final, ya saben.
Thank you both for taking us on a journey that we took in Swedish, and then the same journey that we took in Spanish. But the rhythm of the train, the rhythm of the movement was still there till the final moment, of course. Right, I'm going to ask Derek if he'd like to try again now. Before you do, Derek, I'm just going to check on any of the guys in the room. If you've had your phone on and you suddenly notice that there was this wonderful mobile Wi-Fi signal you could use, 4G mobile, and you could save your phone reception, please don't use it because that's the mobile signal that we're sending to run the event. So any strain on that signal can lose to some interruptions. But in the meantime, let's go to Ireland. Are you with us again, Professor Coyle?
Thank you very much, Colm. Sorry for about that, folks. I hope you got my introduction. I'll maybe just start the poem again. Anyway, unfortunately, a parable for our times. The Kafka doll. And love to Tranos, by the way. I wish I was there having a Nas beer, by the way. But anyway, he climbed out of the piano in the middle of the night. And given his experience of getting himself out of a tight squeeze, he had no problem squishing out under the door. He was happy to be free. Instead of running to the forest to live the life of some wild, feral creature, he headed to the center of town. Pushing himself under the bibliothèque door, he hides there in its dark corners, furtively studying at night these strange creatures he finds himself amongst. Their law books, their history, mythology. They still seem strangers to him. What to make of them? Their conquest of their fellow creatures, elephants, horses, dogs. He could not comprehend their violence to each other. In his world, you tenderly caressed your brother, tightening his stitches when you had to, so that he did not fall apart. Above all else, he taught them lost. Their demagogues rattled their sabers. Here was the enemy, and there, and here. The gateways that could lead them forward were hidden and more remote than they had been for some time. Many claimed this one as the way, while others pointed to another, to this one, and others still pointed to that one. The day was coming, he was sure, when he would step out from his place in the dark with all he had studied and learned, a Christ, Buddha, Krishna, and lead them, him of the blue face, faded skin, naked, soft, and frayed, their gaze no longer confused, their swords lowered, their demagogues silenced. He would reveal their future. Anyway, thank you very much. I think we got there in the end with that broadcast. So thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening, Tranos and Wales.
Cheers, Derek, and America. Yes, thank you for that, Derek. I guess you guys outside of Tronos were probably finishing off your tea or making your cups of coffee or pouring yourself a beer while we were watching the previous event here at the festival. But Elizabeth Torres finished a panel discussion with a war cry for those who live on the margins, those who are blue of face, those who are weirdos, and it really resonates, Derek, with the leadership that you spoke of towards the end of those marginalized groups that you pulled out of the community of those puppets in that exhibition. Okay, I'm going to stay on the big screen and ask Mark Linden if he'd like to join us from Swansea, please.
How wonderful it is to hear all the different tunes and tones from different parts of the world. This prose poesy essays to apprise us of an infinite fight between inky night tide and iridescent day. Its inverse verse flick-flacks, twisting twixt restive verve and restorative repose. Here, a metaphor for good versus evil, and vice versa. Amorphous nemesis. With vulpine stealth, drowsiness sneaks near, 'neath dust-colored dusk. Ominous opacity seemingly summons somnolence, presaging this sinister sister's insidious advance. Watch icky-dicky darks, sightless sorceress, bewitch, wakening her weakening adversary. She despises sleep's animated antithesis, while beguilingly unleashing dreamy tenebrosity. Charming, calming whispers disarm as dusky slumbers, specious seductress lulls him into a fool's sense of security. Unspoken is her bespoke quest to expunge exuberance and usher in lightless nights, silent insentience. gulled by the chum, offensive, roseate sunbeams, bonny ebullience, delinquesces, inside dewy invisibilities, impenetrable, poor, inevitable, inexorable, exhaustions, occitants, burgeons, then burdens, lidded eyes. Razzle-dazzle day submissively surrenders to his looming, amorphous nemesis. Our querulous pair of eternal enemies embodies antipathies, empty enmity in its entirety. And any empathy or amity seems an anomaly, amnesty an impossibility. Oscillating solar opposites, flip-flop fracas, resembles rancorous animus everlasting. 'Tis a topsy-turvy top-dog fight to the never, ever finish. Despite luminosity's ignominious capitulation to glimmering gloaming, their diurnal tussle looks destined to resume at fantastical first light. Soon, enlivening sunshine can eliminate enervation when nascent dawn's pearlescent illumination awakens once more. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. It's wonderful to hear your very familiar style to many of us in Wales, certainly. This is only the second time that you've joined us over the last 6 months online, and it's wonderful to have you here in the room as part of the festival in Tronos. I think nearly everyone in this room would consider themselves an English speaker, an English language speaker, mostly not as a first language. And those who are not first language speakers, I think really feel that what they've just heard from you was a soundscape and not anything that would make much sense to them at all. They're all going to go searching for their dictionaries once again. But it was absolutely wonderful, Mark. We're all very familiar with that style back home, and it's great to have you here. I'm going for another English voice now that's going to come to you from the physical festival venue in Tronos, and ask Lucy to come and do something for us, please.
Good, thanks. Hi. So this is another little flash fiction, and it's called Calypso and the Cherry Blossoms. Calypso is tired of Ogygia, so tired. She much prefers this place, its neon trees, its soft blue air. Here they have things to make immortality bearable. Gyoza, cosplay clubs and kitten ears, little black knickers that hold a dildo snug and make her a man for a night. Pachinko. She goes to Victoria's Secret and thinks she could spend a lifetime in there. A change is as good as a rest, and the old gods won't notice she's gone. Anyway, she has a man. Calypso came across his scuppered boat and saw his face and loved his clever eyes and took him in. She knows the drill, the xenia that's supposed to follow, the gifts she's meant to give. She feeds him, makes his bed, ties him up, flight risk that he is. So far from home. His ankles roped, his wrists. Her knots don't bind his heart, but that will come. The stories do not say, the Trojans didn't know, although who can tell about the Greeks, how pretty Odysseus likes to be. No hexameter paints his eyelids scarab green. They do not speak of this in epic verse. His arse in lace, the lotus mouth, the bruises fingered up and down his thighs. Calypso doesn't pretend her finger at his skin is not a match, blazing. She's known what lust might be, scorching, all too brief, but this is new. Her heart ascends and swells, a muscle bright and zen with love. This is how she puts it to them, the old gods. The ones who find her even here come looking for her in the cherry blossoms, saying some shit about it's not her destiny to live with him forever. It's real love, she says, like you'd know. Time to go home now, Zeus says. Off you pop. Calypso doesn't give a fuck about destiny. The gods are hypocrites, she thinks. She's just glad to still have legs, not to be a swan, a spring, a tree, not to be battened to the sky, her body stars. Those other nymphs, the ones who cannot wrap themselves around the men they adore, can't stand behind them stroking the singing bowls of their spines until they scream. She pities them. She's thinking about the hard, bright diamond of Odysseus's back, his face at the floor, how sometimes in the morning they'd find his breastplate kicked and broken under the living room table. Hot sake dripping off his tongue, his wits unfurling when she rolls the stockings from up his legs from off her own. The handjobs in sacred woods, the echo through the valley when he comes. We make our own destiny, she tells Zeus. Turns her back, strokes the hard, tight place between her legs and keeps her stranger anyway. A pet, a plaything gagged. But sometimes in the quietest spaces of night, she rocks inside him, hears him moan, "You are too much. Your love too much. Your head too much. You are too much." Well, she says, you put a storm inside me. What did you expect? Your Penelopes, your Circes, your women of the white arms? Am I going to have to fuck them out of you too? Calypso doesn't know what he thinks about that. She will not tell him how she'd eat the wind or bind his boats with weeds to stop him leaving. Her fear, those dark-haired sirens in her dreams, she tries to keep inside, mostly. But still her heart is a typhoon, raging. At night, he snores and spoons and sighs the sex inside his dreams. She rubs his feet with hers, how hard she loves. "Stay right here," she whispers, and clamps his nipples tight, vowing not to go back to Ogygia alone. And Calypso's thought about this. If the gods return, she'll just do this. Hold tighter, spit and scratch, and let me keep him. Or tell them this instead. A story of the men who came before and stalked her island, made demands, or promised nothing, the ones she'd happily build ships to cast adrift. She takes the roll call in her head. She is forever after all. The narcissists, the shameful sex, the downright cunts, the ones she can't forget, their violent hands, how they'd roll over, on her, pushing smells of cloves and cock and sweat at her face, their frantic little motions, all of them asking, "Baby, where's your Xenia now?" Thank you.
Thank you, Lucy. Flash fiction seems to be such a contemporary genre, very, very modern. And to return to the classics within that genre was nice, but then some very contemporary language during the flash fiction. Lucy has read a short story, a poem, and a flash fiction over the last week or so at various performances. She's also given us a wonderful presentation on the lyric essay, and I certainly feel that I now feel elements of the lyric essay in everything that Lucy has read for us, whether she described it as a poem or a flash fiction or a short story. I can't unsee the braiding that she's explained to us. So thank you for all that you've given us over the festival so far, Lucy. Right, I'm going to call now a Poems and Pints and a Pilsnerpoesi virgin. I've not heard Steve read either in the Queen's or in Tronos. But Steve Garrett, would you like to address the microphone now, please?
Yeah, thanks so much. Kind of a topical one. We've all had a lot of time on our hands, and this is one of the things that came out. It's called Lockdown, Last Chance. Living through the months of Sundays, I've often felt like an extra on the set of a post-apocalypse B-movie that I wanted to walk out of. And when cash was suddenly conjured to keep the economic ship afloat, those arguments for austerity, which had left so many out in the cold, were revealed to be more like secrets and lies than anything to do with financial prudence. For the lucky ones with homes and gardens, lockdown has been a welcomed paid break, a chance for some family time, with treats and meals delivered while friends kept in touch from a safe distance. Life, a walk in the park with cleaner air and more birdsong. But in the city centre, society's rejects cluster with no one to beg from. The idea of social distancing a bad joke to those who had always been given a wide berth. And families cramped in tiny flats drove each other up the damp walls, while men who used their fists to get attention had a truly captive audience. The rug has been pulled out from under our addiction to owning, now laid bare in all its emptiness, and the seemingly unstoppable train of consumption is out of steam just before going over a cliff. We have time on our hands to wonder, do we really want to just get back on board, or were we simply not sure how to choose a different destination? Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Topical indeed. And that idea of choosing a different destination and kind of reinventing the world, considering what has happened during the pandemic. I mean, it made me think of Benk's poem and that final destination also. But one thing that this is very topical, we all empathize with what you've spoken about. Speaking very personally from Tronos at the moment, I must say I understand what you mean by month full of Sundays, but we feel like we just had 3 Saturdays in a row here, and this is the biggest and best of those Saturdays. So I'm going to come back into the room, and before we go for our first break, because we're going to take 2 breaks today, they're going to be short breaks, only 10 minutes, but those breaks will frame a performance that we're going to have here live, a music performance with Axelsson&Boberg. So before we go into the break, I'd like to ask Linda to come and do something, please.
I'm just going to say sorry, this is going to be in Swedish because I didn't have time to translate it. Om du bara för en gångs skull kunde öppna ögonen, använda hjärnan, använda ögonen, ja då kanske du skulle kunna förstå, sluta vara så jävla korkad och för en gångs skull verka smart. Istället för att säga orden gick hon därifrån, suckade djupt och ville slå huvudet i väggen. Det skulle fortfarande få henne att verka smartare än dig.
Thank you, Linda. And I was going to say, don't apologize. Don't ever apologize for reading in Swedish. Don't apologize because it's great to hear your voice and to hear it in its native language. And don't apologize either because we know what a busy life you lead and it's not easy to find the time to translate. We're going to keep going. Actually, this is a fluid situation. So we're not going to break yet. We're going to put some pressure back on those people the other side of the screen. And just as they were thinking, I can walk away from the computer and go to the toilet. No, you can't, Derek. Derek, another Pilsnerpoesi virgin. Derek Davis, will you do something for us, please?
Hi there. Yes, this is Derek Davis. I'm from Port Talbot, but I'm originally born in Swansea. This is a poem I wrote about Dylan Thomas, was from Swansea, so this is Dylan's Town. This bay I loved, the more I live, by glistening seas on rugged rocks. Seabirds venture, its prey unsuspecting, nature's games, so cruel, so unkind. People stroll along that promenade, 1,000 souls upon its shore. Memories fixed, a time uncaring, my joy lay down as once before. One beautiful bay, one golden shoreline, days of laughter take me back. This town I loved, this place of beauty, those dreams now laid down in my past. A time to love, to share its splendor, one emerald sea that takes me home. That glorious hope, this life worth living, this place lay where my heart now roams. O glorious bay of Dylan's Town, where Cobble once was king. Many ships lay anchored at your port, great wealth back then did bring. One mighty river Towie that rakes across the land, splitting the town as it goes on by, till it touches golden sand. Dreams of a time long in my past where my memories often play. Moments that live with me forever for my love of Swansea Bay. Thank you.
Thank you, Derek. I love that moment when the tower came down and split the city, opening out onto the golden sands of Swansea Bay. I think it was a look back. It was definitely a look back for you, not just to Swansea, but a look back from you to Dylan Thomas, because we certainly heard the influences in there. So it was a poem that, yes, was of your memory, but also of a poetic style that was informed by your past reading too. Okay, I think I'm going to stay online and go from the tower to the Towie and ask Mel if she'd like to do something for us, please.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm just going to pin myself. Gosh, it's lovely to be part of this evening. I was just wondering if Dominic was feeling a little homesick listening to Derek's poem there, because I've certainly been feeling Tranos sick over this last week. So this is my tribute for the Fringe, and yeah, here we go. At the Fringe. Did it fall? Was it flicked? Who gives a fuck? Once we wondered why we were all going to that place between somewhere and nowhere. Now I hate to know that I couldn't go. And yet, 5 times I hovered in that town's night sky when the day's night time's midsummer dazzle merely blows a midnight kiss to the high line of latitude at 58 degrees. The first time I went, 2015, the Yeats year, when indeed there were no strangers there, only friends I now hold dear. When we 4 first fringed, we read our passions for words in the library, and the Irish ambassador dined out with us too, and we read for her as well. 2016, when Svensson crossed water, crossed a threshold, performed his poetry at the mic for the first time. Inesh struck matches from matches boxes, made all our heads on fire, and Young Writers Lab was born. 2017, Kafka's year, when Derek breakfasted in the Great Western, composing, creating, constructing those Tranos poems, and he smoothed the shoulder of a silk-stitched doll. When we chalked messages on the pavement and launched 10th Circle's book. When Jenny kindly shared her curtained room with me, and Calvin showed us how Tranos moved him, moved us all. 2018, when Jai Ho rang across town and I danced with Wraith and Britta. Dana sweated letters, learning to write Canghanedd. The Welsh hugged each other, howled for home, hearing Mamgi's letter from Ivor. When Platson's Verfatera bore 2 new young writers, and when town closed even earlier one Saturday afternoon, as poetry was kicked into touch for us to watch Sweden play England and lose. But Peter Murphy stomped on Plomby's tabletops and we thumped our fists along too. 2019, walking along the Svarten, writing in mist, and more young writers blossomed as voices bubbled up from flooded curbsides, and families smiled with pride at book releases, and Janice, Rufus, and Louise nailed those nasty women poets. And still more midnight skinny dips in Trollhuen, fags and beers and tears again on the balcony at EFG. This is the town whose cornflower skies, tender opportunity, where old stones, parched by sunburn, offer a deeper dusk. 2020. Did it fall? Was it flicked? Who gives a fuck? This year of Morgan poesy, Fika poesy, lyric essay, punk letters, passion for the spoken word. Filmmakers flickering poignant clips, video poems of solstice, moss and passerines. Anna Imra swirling pleated wings, dancing like a skate shimmering in sea, magenta moon jellyfish gyrating turquoise of our shared oceans. Where Eleanor and Trian cannot meet, their not conversation is blown in sidewinding sands, hurrying its urgency at my screen, weaving their agency, clarioning the voices of their lockdown lives. Now, flash to steps to a brick and concrete warehouse, a loading bay where the Feed Collective rolls up the shutters and revives the punk core of this town. Big man Pilsnerpoesi with his even bigger book, and Ron Riddell bringing flights of curlew and godwit from Hauraki Gulf to Salmon to a lump in the throat of Tav and Tawi. Watching online, I even ate a pastiche de nata from Carmarthen Lidl to enjoy the Fika Poesy, but that was so 2017. On my computer, a Northern Life pops up, tells me that your performance tasks are complete. I reply, yours may be, but not mine. They'll never be done. This festival, this year, all transluced through the oblong jam jars of Zoom and YouTube, twiddled and enabled by the mixer desk, the backstage green room, the Trano stage in Cultivera's library and Strandbaren, all out worldwide, all into our homes. And before I finish, can someone catch the fairground man as he lands and send him home intact? Once, we wondered why we were all going to that place between somewhere and nowhere. Now, I hate to know that I couldn't go. And yet, just see what we can do. Did it fall? Was it flicked? Do we give a fuck? No, because for me, this fringe flew. Tack så mycket.
Well, this microphone is very, very unidirectional, so I don't know whether it picked up the audience. Mel, did you hear your reception then?
A little bit, a little bit. Thank you, I miss you so much.
So if Derek was looking back at Swansea and Dylan Thomas, that was certainly a look back. Not quite as much a tribute to the Fringe, more a litany. And I'm really glad that this has been this event has been recorded, because I think those who've come to one Fringe or two Fringes may like to take that poem as some kind of puzzle and go and look for all the references that are in there. There's so many in-jokes, I suppose you might call them also, but so many references, even so many borrowed lines of poetry that were punctuating that piece. Yeah, go take that piece, go and listen to it, and see if you can tick off which Fringe it applied to. Okay, somebody who's come, as you see, I'm not sure, somebody who's certainly been here for 2 Fringes, maybe 3. Philip, will you come and do something for us now, please?
Let's see here. I'm going to be reading in Swedish and then in English. So this is the private, det privata. Jag behöver ta fram det här, för det är viktigt för mig. Och jag vet inte riktigt hur jag ska förhålla mig till allt när jag funderat och tankarna är större än huvudet och trycker mot läpparna. Men jag har ältat så länge, så långt att jag är rädd att allt ska komma ut som en clownnäsduk. Som fortsätter och har så många olika ljusa färger. Som alla kommer att se och ingen förstår sensmoralen bakom en massa hopknutna näsdukar i olika färger. För de ser ju bara en clown och skrattar och säger att det är roligt för att det kommer saker ur min mun som egentligen ska ligga i en ficka. Och att även om det låg i en ficka skulle det vara för många näsdukar för att anses vara en godtagbar mängd näsdukar i förhållande till antalet näsor som gemene clown har. Så jag tiger. knyter näsdukar med tungan, gömmer dem i ärmen, i fickan, och när du frågar, har du en näsduk? Så svarar jag tror jag ska ha en här någonstans. Klappar mig förläget på den vänstra och sen den högra fickan. Och får aldrig veta att du bara frågade för att du ville veta hur många näsdukar det är normalt för en människa att ha. And in English. I need to get this out there because it's important to me, and I don't really know how to relate to everything that I've thought when the thoughts are bigger than the head. And so they press on my lips, but I've ruminated for so long that the chain is so long that I'm afraid that it will come out like a clown handkerchief that goes on and has so many bright colors that everyone will see, and nobody understands the significance of a bunch of tied together napkins and handkerchiefs in a myriad of colors, because all they see is a clown and they laugh and say that it's funny because there are things leaving my mouth that should really be stuffed in a pocket, and that even if it was stuffed in a pocket, it would be too many handkerchiefs to be considered an acceptable amount of handkerchiefs in relation to the number of noses possessed by the common clown. So I remain silent, tying handkerchiefs with my tongue, hiding them up my sleeve, in my pocket. And when you ask me, do you by any chance have a handkerchief? I answer, yes, I do believe I have one somewhere around here. An abashed patting on my left and then my right coat pocket, and I never get to know that the only reason you asked was to see how many handkerchiefs it's normal for a person to have. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. Wonderfully gently delivered poem, as always. Your voice is. When you read in Swedish, I find it so soothing, and yet when I hear the English translation, I realize how deceptive that was, and how very raw the poem is in its consideration. So thank you for that. And now I'm going to return to Wales and ask Jackie if you do something for us, please.
Oh, hello. Can you hear me? Yeah. I can't see, so I can't see anything. So I'll carry on. Yeah. Okay. I'll carry on. Thank you. This is. I don't think I'm likely to be swimming much more this year, so this is for me and my not swimming. The Witch's Cauldron. Her green light shines out through the arch in the undercliff, a jade gleam as sun rises into the day. Her voice whispers your name and resonates in the hollow, accompanied by the rhythm of waves slapping on foreshore and the bellow and boom of seals. She welcomes you into the swelling pool where sea stirs to lift you towards open sky, where it holds you and lets you go. Spend your day with her among the folding magma of rock, in the echo of receding caves, and in the surge and suck of surf. Evening sea light through the low arch glows copper with diamond edges to call you out again to the wide ocean. And you know it will soon be too late to leave. But linger a while. Rest in the lapping of the flood, watch darkness fall and tide rise as sea light dims to violet. And as she murmurs, stay, 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 you see the cup of the pool holds all the sky, and you can swim among stars. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Yes, we know that you are a lover of sea swimming, well, of all wild water swimming, really. We have access to very vast lakes here in Sweden, lakes certainly large enough that the waves lap when they've been affected by the wind. So thank you for introducing us to that witch of the water. I'm sorry that you won't be seeing her anymore this year, but next year it will come. So now we are going to take a break for about 15 minutes. So to you guys who are online, take a break, have a chat, go and get a cuppa. But in about 15 minutes, we will be having an absolutely fringe-topping performance here from Axelsson&Boberg. So at 8:30, come back to the stage, please, and I'll see you soon.
Ditt hej kommer alltid att vara mer värt än mitt hej. Din barndom kommer alltid att vara mer värd än min barndom. Din mamma och pappa kommer alltid att vara mer värda än min mamma och pappa. Din skolgång kommer alltid att vara mer värd än min skolgång. Dina sommarlov kommer alltid att vara mer värda än mina sommarlov. Din lycka kommer alltid att vara mer värd än min lycka. Din sexuella debut kommer alltid att vara mer värd än min sexuella debut. Ditt arbete kommer alltid att vara mer värt än mitt arbete. Din kropp kommer alltid att vara mer värd än min kropp. Din vardag kommer alltid att vara mer värd än min vardag. Dina barn kommer alltid att vara mer värda än mina barn. Dina språkkunskaper kommer alltid att vara mer värda än mina språkkunskaper. Din rätt till 4 veckors sammanhängande semester kommer alltid att vara mer värd än min rätt till 4 veckors sammanhängande semester. Din klädstil kommer alltid att vara mer värd än min klädstil. Dina orgasmer kommer alltid att vara mer värda än mina orgasmer. Din medelålderskris kommer alltid att vara mer värd än min medelålderskris. Din bakfylla kommer alltid att vara mer värd än min bakfylla. Din karriär kommer alltid att vara mer värd än min karriär. Ditt trädgårdsintresse kommer alltid att vara mer värt än mitt trädgårdsintresse. Din subjektivitet kommer alltid att vara mer värd än min subjektivitet. Din objektivitet kommer alltid att vara mer värd än min objektivitet. Ditt trafikvett kommer alltid att vara mer värt än mitt trafikvett. Ditt behov av vila. Din omsorg kommer alltid att vara mer värd än min omsorg. Dina uppdateringar kommer alltid att vara mer värda än mina uppdateringar. Dina träningspass kommer alltid att vara mer värda än mina träningspass. Dina misslyckanden kommer alltid att vara mer värda än mina misslyckanden. Dina överväganden kommer alltid att vara mer värda än mina överväganden. Din jägarexamen kommer alltid att vara mer värd än min jägarexamen. Dina sånger kommer alltid att vara mer värda än mina sånger. Dina helger med familjen kommer alltid att vara mer värda än mina helger med familjen. Ditt våld kommer alltid att vara mer värt än mitt våld. Din smärta kommer alltid att vara mer värd än min smärta. Dina naturupplevelser kommer alltid att vara mer värda än mina naturupplevelser. Dina återbesök i barndomshemmet kommer alltid att vara mer värda än mina återbesök i barndomshemmet. Dina svek kommer alltid att vara mer värda än mina svek. Ditt drogberoende kommer alltid att vara mer värt än mitt drogberoende. Dina husdjur kommer alltid att vara mer värda än mina husdjur. Din sjukdomsbild kommer alltid att vara mer värd än min sjukdomsbild. Din ålderdom kommer alltid att vara mer värd än min ålderdom. Dina minnen kommer alltid att vara mer värda än mina minnen. Din glömska kommer alltid att vara mer värd än min glömska. Din sorg kommer alltid att vara mer värd än min sorg. Ditt liv efter döden kommer alltid att vara mer värt än mitt liv efter döden. Ditt hejdå kommer alltid att vara mer värt än mitt hejdå. Så mellanchefen och hälsocoachen bläddrar i din sås. Så dagisfröken och orkesterledaren bläddrar i din sås. Så besiktningsmannen och bibliotekarien bläddrar i din sås. Så gladjazzen och viskleken bläddrar i din sås. Det finns i vårt arkiv! 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 Så orienterarsjukan och konservatorn bläddrar i din sås. Så kennelägaren och lastbilskaffisen bläddrar i din sås. Så förvaltningsdirektören och kallskänken bläddrar i din sås. Så copywritern och KTH-professorn bläddrar i din sås. Det finns i vårt arkiv! 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 Så diakonen och strejkbrytaren bläddrar i din sås. Så garvaren och talpedagogen bläddrar i din sås. Så mögelsaneraren och hudterapeuten bläddrar i din sås. Så ridläraren och läromedelsförfattaren bläddrar i din sås. Det finns i vårt arkiv! 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 Ögat flyter ut i rymden. 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 Det lämnar bara synranden och ögonvrån kvar. 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 Det som rör sig är kanske urverk utan timmar. Det som verkar är kanske tystnadens spöke. Det som glittrar är kanske städer som slocknar. Det som glimmar är kanske sjöar som brinner. Ögat flyter ut i rymden. 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 Det lämnar bara synranden och ögonvrån kvar. 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 Det som rör sig är kanske urverk utan timmar. Det som verkar är kanske tystnadens spöke. Det som glittrar är kanske städer som slocknar. Det som glimmar är kanske sjöar som brinner. Det som rör sig är kanske urverk utan timmar. Det som verkar är kanske tystnadens spöke. Det som glittrar är kanske städer som slocknar. Det som glimmar är kanske sjöar som brinner.
Vi kommer att köra 3 covers ikväll och de 2 första kör vi på en och samma gång. Så medan Magnus kör sin version av Steve Reich Piano Face så gör jag en tolkning av en av Bruno K. Öijers dikter. Stela vita frusna fingrar. Stela vita frusna fingrar. Stela vita frusna fingrar knäppta. Stela vita frusna fingrar knäppta. Runt en kopp blod. 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 I Amerikas förenta stater. Det här är nästa cover. En svensk version av Gregory Whiteheads Everything I Know About Glossolalia. Allt jag vet om glossolalia. Lila slog sol, glulos ila, log sol sila sal il logos. Ola SOS gli alisilo sol, gulos illa, glusa lusi. Glossolali. Glossolali. Uilas lu, glulolas is, giallolos gusillaos. Il glasono iglus als, sol illa gus, gillas Oslo. Glossolali.
glossolali. Och Olga sill och lossa gill och solgas lill li slog saon. Och Olga sill och lossa gill och solgas lill li slog saon. Glossolali. 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 Oro. 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 Ola. Oro. Ulla. 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 Oro. Ola. Ulla. Oro. 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 Oro. 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 Oro. Ola. Oro. Ulla. 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 Oro. 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 Ola. Ulla. Tack ska ni ha.
Tack så mycket. What a fantastic performance. That's jazz things up a bit. Let's see if we can keep that energy up, keep that momentum going. So I'm going to start back with the open mic in the room with Melitza.
Don't worry, I will take care. SMS lečenje. Ovo je zemlja koju vodi politička partija koja stalno govori o porodičnim vrednostima, a nečija deca koja boluju od raka se leče SMS porukama. Ovo je zemlja koju vodi politička partija koja stalno govori o porodičnim vrednostima, a nečiji brat ili sestra se leče od raka SMS porukama. Ovo je zemlja koju vodi politička partija koja stalno govori o porodičnim vrednostima, a nečiji otac, majka, samohrana majka ili samohrani otac se leče od raka SMS porukama. Ovo je zemlja koju vodi politička partija koja stalno govori o porodičnim vrednostima, ali ne misli na sve vrste porodice ni svu neusvojenu decu kojima treba ljubav i podrška, a neko od njih se leče od raka SMS porukama. Ovo je zemlja koju vodi politička partija koja govori, a ne shvata da se svi ti ljudi ne mogu lečiti od raka SMS porukama. Iza svih tih SMS poruka stoji neizdrživa tuga i neiscrpna empatija ljudi sa ograničenim resursima, ali ipak treba da postoji neka infrastruktura na nivou države, ali zdravstvo je ovde urušena institucija.
SMS healthcare. This is the country led by a political party which constantly speaks about family values while someone's children have cancer, have to cure themselves with SMS donations. This is the country led by a political party which constantly speaks about family values while someone's brother or sister has cancer and have to cure themselves with SMS donations. This is the country led by a political party which constantly speaks about family values while someone's mother, father, single father have cancer and have to cure themselves with SMS donations. This is a country led by a political party which constantly speaks about family values, but does not think of all types of families, of all unadopted children who need love and support, some of whom may have cancer and have to cure themselves with SMS donations. This is the country led by a political party which constantly speaks, but does not understand that all these people cannot cure themselves with SMS donations. Behind all these SMS messages stands unbearable sadness and inexhaustible empathy, people with limited resources. But there has to be some infrastructure on the state level. Healthcare is a collapsed institution.
Na ramenima. Učila sam od jakih žena kako snaga treba da izgleda, a da ne povredi. Da povede, inspiriše, ohrabri. Tamo gde drugi zaćute i nemaju šta da kažu, ja ću biti i pričati i ćutati. Zavisno od toga kako srce nalaže i unutrašnji kompas oseti. Učila sam od jakih žena da slabost nije negativna osobina, nego sposobnost da prepoznamo krhkost u ljudima, da je razumemo, prihvatimo i zavolimo, kao retku biljku, nezaštićenu pred zakonom. Učila sam od jakih žena vrednost zagrljaja, dubine tišine i slojeva samoće. I kada treba pustiti ljude unutra i bliže, da bi se podelio taj prostor za buduće snage u nama, jer ne znamo šta može da dođe. I kada dođe, da znamo da nismo same, da stojimo na ramenima jakih žena, pružajući ruke ka drugima, jer samo smo toliko ljudi kada se dodirujemo duboko negde iznutra.
On shoulders. I learned from strong women what strength was supposed to look like, but not to be hurt, to lead, inspire, encourage in a moment when everyone is silent and has nothing to say. I will be there. We'll be talking or we'll be listening, according to what the heart says and the internal compass feels. I learned from strong women that weakness is not a negative characteristic, but the ability to recognize fragility in people, stand it, accept it, and love it, like a rare plant and protected under the law. I learned from strong women the value of hugs, the depths of silence and layers of solitude, and when to let people inside and nearer to share that space for a future strength in us, because we don't know what is ahead of us. And when that comes, for us to know that we are not alone, that we are standing on the shoulders of strong women, stretching our arms towards others, because we are only people then when we touch each other deeply somewhere inside. Tack så mycket. Thank you very much. Melissa. Thank you, Melissa. And now I'm going to go back online, and I hope that from Colombia, George will join us and read something.
Okay, I will indeed. First of all, the former poem was really very touching and very moving, and I'm going to take things sort of in a completely different direction, but I do want to tip my hat to such sensitive and wonderful poetry. Okay, Dylan Thomas was mentioned earlier, and the Welsh hegemony of poems and pints and poems leads me to do something in memory of DT. Curiously, I'm not going to read a Dylan Thomas poem. I'm actually going to read a W.H. Auden poem. But I'm going to read a W.H. Auden poem the way that it echoes in my head from having heard Thomas read it in a recording that I had a long time ago, over and over again. It's called Song of the Master and Boatswain, and I'll try to roar it in his memory. At Dirty Dick's and Sloppy Joe's, we drank our liquor straight. Some went upstairs with Marjorie, and some, alas, with Kate. And 2 by 2, like cat and mouse, the homeless played at keeping house. There, wealthy Meg, the sailor's friend, and Marion, cow-eyed, opened their arms to me, but I refused to step inside. I was not looking for a cage in which to mope in my old age. The nightingales are sobbing in the orchards of our mothers, and hearts that we broke long ago have long been breaking others. Tears around, the sea is deep. Roll them overboard and sleep. Thanks.
Thank you, George. For the second time this evening, we look back to Dylan Thomas, and from one great poet in Colombia, a tribute to 2 other greats in Auden and Thomas himself. And yes, thank you. The signal over these many, many miles flutters sometimes, and yet I still captured the echoes that you were trying to send to us. Certainly, I recognize those echoes in Thomas's voice. Okay, I'm going to stay online for a moment and ask for one more Pilsnerpoesi virgin to come and join us. Elizabeth, would you like to read something for us, please? If you're still there.
Hi. My poem this evening is called Denial. Babe, you knew, didn't you? My soul knew it as my heart cried. My head fought it, denied it, The wise man carved in the trees knew it, but I couldn't believe it, refused to accept it. I heard it in the whispering winds. The hail bruised me with its stones. Electrical currents in angry skies roared their thundery clouds as heaven poured its tears below. Snow-blinded footprints, dazzling, walked on wings of a prayer. Reflection in your shades looked back at me and smiled. My soul wept its goodbyes as you left, but the sunshine was yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. It's a poem that speaks of love, of course, and of loss, but resonates with this time and with your weather metaphors, I guess. It makes us think of this time of year when we feel that we may be losing the sun and moving into a cooler time, but there is still that optimism for a love that may be lost but still shines strong. I'm going to come back into the room now and ask the sound engineer from the last performance to come and read something for us, please. Jonas.
Poems on sounds and music. Dikter om ljud och musik på svenska med improviserade engelska översättningar. Poems in Swedish but with extemporized translations into English, as this is after all an international festival, isn't it? Nattaxi. Musiken som en genomskinlig taxi att följa med dig ut med gatorna. Vinden blåser rakt genom kupén. Night taxi. Music as a transparent taxi to ride with along the streets. The wind blows straight through it. Jordskred. This is a poem that already encompasses some words in English. Med huvudet lutat mot badkarskanten hör jag långt borta en låt med effektiv refräng. Kanske hjälper vattnet till att leda ljudet av gitarrerna och den trotsigt konstaterande rösten. Landslide, landslide, landslide. Egentligen är det för tidigt på morgonen för att någon i huset skulle spela musik så pass högt. Kanske är det bara i mitt huvud som jordskredet pågår. Det inre manifesterar sig i det yttre. Inget nytt i detta. Runt omkring mig rasar huset samman. Det är som vanligt. Landslide. With my head against the edge of the bathtub, I hear from far away a song with a really good chorus. Perhaps the water helps to lead the sound of the guitars and the defiant, factual voice. Landslide, landslide, landslide. Really, it's too early in the morning for somebody within this house to play music that loud. Perhaps it's just in my head that there is a landslide. The interior will manifest itself in the exterior. There's nothing new in that. All around me, the house falls apart. It's all as usual. And lastly, a poem called The Warehouse, lagret. Så många snurror, så många höga hattar, så många gamla brädspel, så mycket böcker och instrument, leksaker och trycksaker. Det är hit vi kommer för att leta material till sånger, byggklossar till låtar. Jag känner på mig att här finns både textsnuttar och melodifraser. Här är den här rytmen igen. Låt nyfikenheten styra letandet. Det viktiga är att förbli hungrig. And I cannot do even an extemporized translation of this without, in a way, revealing well, those phrases that I stole and what band's music went into this poem. The warehouse. So many spinning tops, so many cylinder hats, so many ancient board games, so many books, so many instruments, toys and prints. This is where we come to look for material for songs, to look for building blocks for tunes. And I have a hunch that both snatches of phrase and snatches of melody are to be found here. Here's that rhythm again. Let curiosity lead your search. Important thing is stay hungry.
A splendidly structured set, and those snatches of phrases, those snatches of melodies. You know, during the Fringe Festival, there are conversations in the street, there are poems that you fall into, there are Passion for Words events, and sometimes it all gets jumbled up in my head and I can't remember where I heard what. And those snatches, that chaos of creativity is one of the most wonderful things. But in one of those conversations or poems, we were talking about relevance, and I think that set was absolutely relevant and such generous translations into English for us. I'm thinking of the melodies of the wind around that glass frame over there, and that frame could be a transparent taxi. So thank you, Jonas. I'm going to go back online, go back over to Wales, and ask Rosie if she'd do something for us, please.
Okay, thank you for having me. You can blame Mark for that. He invited me. I haven't ever read at a Swedish festival before, so this is very exciting. Unfortunately, I can only read this in English, so in English it is. This is a poem about my father, who would have been 100 this year. It's called Bats, Stars and Roses. Can you hear the bats, he whispers, their shrill curves of sound bouncing off the... No? No. Can you hear me? Something happened there, I'm not sure what. Okay, shall I start again? I don't know what happened there. Bats, stars and roses. Can you hear the bats, he whispers, their shrill curves of sound bouncing off the shed roof? Web wings that skim the pale darkness flitting out of the apple twigs. Their pitch is too high for my old ears, he says. But you, can you hear the bats? His question is an urgent request. Of course, the low sky is full of those little screams, tin shards thrown across the shadows. I cannot imagine the silence that packs his skull as we stand chill on the stone doorstep. I strain back through the cluttered noise of years to reach those tiny scything cries again. Can you see the constellations? The startling sky is teeming with excited points of light. There's the plough, the pole star holding the north, the clustered dots of the seven sisters. Can you count them? Of course, but way beyond 7, their numbers receding into infinity. Look, his hand sweeps across my favourite, the 3 bright studs of Orion's belt, the giant himself barely defined out there in the wasteland of space. I dredge back through the mud of decades to catch that clarity of vision again. Can you smell the roses? Their scent is best this time of evening. Albertine, the climber, salmon pink, profuse, luxuriant. The old varieties are the keenest. My senses are not what they used to be, but can you smell the roses? Of course, the night is drenched in a flood of perfume. The distillation of petals oils the breeze. I breathe back through the asthmatic fogs of a lifetime to inhale that richness again. His gardener's hand is warm on my shoulder. His brown voice smells of earth. His frail silhouette still carries presence. Together we are deaf to the bats, blind to the stars, and the roses radiate a faint memory of sweetness. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Rosie. A beautiful family tribute. And also, I know the poem was looking out, and it could have been looking out from anywhere, but it strikes me that we have this massive international range of poems and performers this evening, and yet it's only when I listen to your poem that I kind of feel that there's been so much of the urban in the poetry, and for whatever reason, I feel that was of the rural, despite the fact that you were looking up at something else. And as Mel said earlier, maybe now I'm starting to feel a little bit homesick. Okay, I'm going to stay online, I think, and ask Dave Irwin to do something for us, please.
Evening. I write topical poems, and I've written quite a lot of poems about homelessness, quite a few poems about the refugee crisis. But until this year, I hadn't written a climate change poem. And about 5 years ago, I made some notes in my notebook in which I actually write my poems longhand initially before I go to the computer. And I had climate change poem, ? And loads of notes, but I couldn't come up with a poem. Time after time I had to go and I couldn't do it. But anyway, earlier this year, I wrote it, and this is it. It's called Nanook, which is the Inuit word for the polar bear. Nanook, the great white bear, paces her pain round and round the barred enclosure. All she knew before was vast white wilderness, beluga whales, walrus, and the breathing holes of ringed seals. All the memory of her forebears is ice flows to distant horizons in cold blue ocean, the wind's desolate howl over snow. Humans gawk at her. All along her cage, ignorant children jigger sticks sold from stalls nearby. Young men, her captors, smear oil into her deep fur. It begins to darken, a slowly spreading black stain. They blow oily smoke into her face, inject her with drugs from dart guns, addicts desperate for a fix. They laugh. Good people protest, oh yes, but behind further bars and held back by masked soldiers wielding weapons. In the far, far north, chunks of ice drop like rotten teeth into warming seas. Oil drips on snow, drips, drips, advancing its black stain. At the other end of the earth, far, far south, cathedrals of ice shelf collapse into the ocean. Emperor penguins waddle still further south, seeking a wind-scoured freezer to breed in. Huddle together for survival, huddle as snowmobiles approach, helicopters hover. As ice retreats from Arctic shorelines, Nanook's relations swim further and further in search of sea ice, in search of ringed seals, try to catch their prey in deeper open water, exhaust themselves in ever-warming seas. Is it too late to turn back? Thanks.
Thank you, Dave. I look forward to seeing you again. It's been months, months since we met each other in the flesh. And yet, even when you're sitting down in a kitchen, still such powerful performance. A great delivery, I'm sure everyone in the room will agree. It's great to hear your voice, not just your oral projection, but also your poetic voice, in which that poem was very clearly set, despite the fact that I feel I hear the influences of the poet beside you in a climate change poem. The first person I heard clap when you finished your performance. Okay, I'd like to come back into Tronos now and ask Elisa to come and address the microphone, please.
Okej, okej. Då måste vi upp. Hej. No. Yes. I will read the poem and I will dedicate it to Melissa and her, what's her name? Irena, because it's happening somewhere there they live. And it's a poem about Nikola Tesla and the city he was born. And the things, yes.
Smiljan.
Okay. Smiljan. Un sol para Nicola. En Smiljan, una mujer gozaba fama de ser diestra en la fabricación de herramientas propias del hogar. También se dice que la dama era ducha en el bramado de épicos poemas y que lo hacía con la senda sin igual soltura con la que fabricaba un cucharón. Uno de los 5 nobles vástagos le nació un día oscuro, sin sol, pleno de rayos, que el bueno de Nicola después llamaría por noble descargas alternas. Diucamandi llegó como pudo al suceso del siglo. Malhumorada socorría a la diestra mientras gritaba de paso a la siniestra: vaya día de perros que te da por alumbrar. Este hijo será un heraldo de la desgracia. No, será hijo de la luz. De sus manos el sol, tantas veces pequeño, renacerá. Dijo la madre, que era una iluminada.
En sol för Nikola. I Smiljan blev en kvinna känd för att skickligt tillverka verktyg för hemmet. Det således denna maklösa dam kunde recitera episka dikter och gjorde det med samma självklara enkelhet som när hon gjorde en slev. En av hennes 5 ädla söner föddes på en mörk dag utan sol, laddad med blixtar, som den gode Nikola av ädelhet sedan kunde kalla växlande ström. Duka Mandic klarade sig med näppe till århundradets mirakel. Vresigt hjälpte hon modern, men skrek samtidigt elakt: vilket hundväder du valde att föda på. Han blev ett omen för olycka. Nej, han ska bli ljusets son. Ur hans händer kommer solen. Att om och om igen återfödas, sa det modern som var upplyst.
Thank you, Elisa, for the Spanish. Thank you, Magnus, for the Swedish poems of Nikola Tesla, and Milica for the Serbian word. We have these links. Again, this speaks of the festival and the world threading, as Elizabeth would call it. When I think of that poem, and I think of the other morning. I could tell you there was a Serbian woman and a Cuban woman and a Colombian woman and an English woman sitting at a table talking about quantum physics. No, it's not a joke. That's that's a typical morning at the festival. Okay, I'm going to go back to Wales now and ask Steve if he'd do something for us, please.
I can hear me. Yeah, everything like that? Yeah. I've done 2 poems tonight. One's about me being a chef in France back in the early 80s. I was going from Nantes to a little town called Laval, back and forth, just chefing and trying to sort of be in with the French lads, I suppose. That's what this poem's about. And the second one's a bit more dramatic. This one's called The Welsh Chef in Laval. Arrived brand new in this town, a hint of frog's legs and escargot, a recipe of foul intentions, waiting for this chef who serves up a meal of Welsh lamb, a tradition in his homeland of Pays de Galles. His culinary vision of Penclouth cockles on the menu at Le Bistronomique, only a pipe dream for now, but this Cymro will have his day in the kitchen with his brotherhood of chefs who compare notes and laughter on made-up portions of gastronomy. Garlic, rosemary, and thyme, the tense smell of sweeter meat, basting in flavours ready for the four de gars to hypnotise the hungry guests with aromas of roasting chipolatas and caramelised onions. A knockoff version of bangers and mash comes to mind. The kitchen in full swing, chopping, dicing, shredding, and tasting a masterclass for those merry men in white. The brandy wine past many lips before hitting the flame pans of the banana fritters. A display of gusto and big hats, passion for food of the highest quality. A signature dish served at the table, mouths ready to explore the cuisine of lava bread and salty bacon. The Welsh wonder has become the #1 contender, a mark left by the Welsh chef in Laval. That's my first one. My second poem, when I used to work in police custody back in 2014, I was an advocate and an appropriate adult, saw many people hooked on cocaine and all sorts of drugs. This spurred me to write this poem about one specific person I met in there, who I helped him get his life back together, and it's called Way Down. Cocaine. The urge kicks in. Smack, crack, attack. The smooth white snow touches my lips, travels across my tongue. Sherbet without lemon begins its journey to the brain, gain on the fast lane. This is no Route 66, no road trip, just tripping on the highway of euphoria with Gloria and Victoria. They too will join me in the skies, flying without wings that sings. Then we take a swig of brandy with candy. They came in handy to travel the vein deal on the Orient Express to the heart. Hippie kicks in, doc spot, they fucked off on another planet. I'm left behind in sorrow, waiting more than before I go. I take a second bite of the icing. My mind is dicing, splicing and disguising. The death that waits me in the morning. This is my last swan song, gone wrong. Met you the other side, you fuckers. I'm done for fun. I feel the sun, no crime, no rhyme to climb. Hit me one more time. I'm off to meet Elvis, the pelvis in Memphis. That's right, the pearly white gates of heaven. I arrived, no one waits for me there. King to swing with bling. I've taken the wrong turn. It's hell, where drugs are free. Maybe, just maybe, I am free in heaven. Thanks.
This Cymro will have his day, and his day is the day in Tronas, the French chef, no, the Welsh chef in France, but he was a poet. Thank you, Steve. That was our last contribution from outside of Sweden. And now I'd like to welcome our last reader to the stage, Elizabeth.
people say that in Latin America there is the culture of witchcraft, and I like to say that I'm an atheist and laugh because I'm Latin American. So sometimes I call poetry little predictions, and then I wrote this one some time ago, assuming it would never happen, and then it just did. So this is my vision back then of the now that we have. I turned it into a CD of experimental music. Here's the a cappella poem, Transgressions for the Public Service. The simple things need no explanation. They have very little in common with the language we use to mimic formal communication. It matters not whether we believe, we proceed, we inhibit, we keep to ourselves, we try, we say never mind, we keep safe distance, we jump to abyss in weekly loop, we make ourselves better based on book of instructions. We remember, we remember, we remember, we remember, we release it, we fix it, we make it doable, we dismiss it, we declare war or apologize profusely, or act like it's never happened, or act like it's never been there. We dance to songs that speak about it without leaving public traces. We read it on the news or pretend it lets us sleep. It matters little whether or not its parts are visible, whether or not others can see them, whether or not we dare to caress them. I know of some who spent a whole lifetime telling stories to cover up the facts for the sake of entire worlds of numb, basic, safe existence. There are tales we never need to let go of. There are rivers we never need to move on from. There are voices and silences and shattered pieces of glass within the skin and Sunday nights and phone calls that never happened and uncomfortable interactions, animal footprints and catastrophes and winters we need not recover from. There's one image of you and maybe more. But see, the ritual consists of repetition. But see, the ritual consists of repetition. It matters not whether we howl or I replay in my head the things that aren't. The music is still louder. The rivers never stopped flowing. The light always got in somehow. The music is still louder. The rivers never stopped flowing. Delight always got in somehow. The light always got in somehow. The light always got in somehow. Delight always got in somehow. The light always got in. 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 Somehow.
Thank you, Ellie, for such a poem, so worthy to close such a fine day. We've come to the end of our Pilsnerpoesi event for this evening, a very special one with a wonderful, wonderful interlude from Axelsson&Boberg. The festival continues tomorrow. Tomorrow morning, There's morning poetry, as there has been every day throughout the festival, tomorrow from Jenny Williams. But I do feel like this is the highlight of the days, or the festival's biggest day, on this Saturday. So I'd like to take this chance to say thank you to Colin, the festival director, to Britta and Frank from Cultivira, to Laura, Orsa, Elizabeth, and Anna, who put together the film festival, to our moderators, Jonas and Mats, to all the performers who are on the official program, and of course, to all of you who are here this evening, and all of you who are there this evening in Colombia, Ireland, Wales, all over the world, because you are the light that always gets in. Tack så mycket. Thank you very much. Diolch yn fawr. Good night.